Word. All right.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. Welcome everyone to the phase change material presentation, April 14th, 2021. We're excited to have you all here. And just to get this party started, how about Rodney, you introduce yourself, and then Ken, you introduce yourself, and I'll introduce myself.
Okay, great. Yes, this is Rodney Hoover, one of the principals and co-founder at Green World Technology Group, and we are the primary distribution partner for Phase Change Solutions based out of Asheboro, North Carolina.
This is Ken Lawrence. I'm Rodney's partner from the start, and we're pushing the phase change. You guys should love it.
Great. And I'm Lindsay Wood with Experience Tiny Homes. And I connected with Mike, who's also on this call. Mike Fredericks also partners with Rodney and Ken, and really excited to share more about phase change materials. So with that, I'm going to dive right in, share my screen and get the presentation open. I won't be able to see the chat during the time when I do the sharing, but I can definitely see people's faces. Oops, I started at the very, we'll start at the very end. Sorry. Let me go back to that. Jump into the right place. Excuse me. Okay. Nothing like getting things going. All right. So am I still sharing my screen? No, I'm not.
No, not right now.
Here we go. Well, we'll do this again. All right. So phase change material in the building envelope for tiny homes, also accessory dwelling units. And there we go. How's that? You see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So Rodney, tell us a little bit about how Green World Technology Group connected with phase change.
Yeah, it's real interesting. We're actually down at the CERL in Champaign, Illinois. It's the Construction Engineering Research Lab for the Army Corps of Engineers. We were down there testing another technology that we used to work with, and phase change happened to be there. And so it was kind of a mutual introduction, and they sort of approached us and said, hey, we're looking for people to help us, spread the good word of phase change and market the technology. And so that's how it all really kind of started. And Ken, that's what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, probably.
I would say somewhere in that range. Maybe 5, yeah. So
have you tracked how much material has been installed with your group of the phase change material? Are we talking?
Oh my goodness gracious! I mean, millions of square feet. Okay, there's probably 22,000 plus installs globally. That phase change has performed. The company was actually started and what was officially started in 2011. Okay. Headquartered out of Asheboro, North Carolina, about a half hour out of Greensboro. And but it's real interesting how they actually started. Their very first projects they did 21 years ago, or almost 22 now. And the way they started was pizza delivery bags for Domino's to keep pizzas hot.
Oh,
so
perfect.
That's how it all kind of started. So, and the original 2 founders are still with the company.
Great, wonderful. Yeah. And so jumping right ahead, I'm Lindsay Wood, the tiny home lady, and in connecting with Mike, we were talking originally about tiny home financing, and one thing led to another, and he tells me about this material, which I tend to call the Jetsons-like material, like the fact that this material right here in my hands, here's the peek at it if you haven't seen it. It's one of the many materials, but this is the energy blanket. So I just heard as you came on asking Bruce, did he receive his blanket yet? This is the blanket where we're talking about, and we'll be diving into more of that and what it does and the benefits. But I thought it would be ideal as an affordable housing developer and tiny home consultant and off-grid solar educator. Phase change can actually be applied in all of the areas, from ADUs to tiny homes on wheels to also inside units that are built for solar, because solar, really the lithium batteries don't like a lot of heat or cold fluctuations. So the phase change material can really help, keep that temperature range in the ideal range. But just to dive a little bit into accessory dwelling units, as I was talking with Rodney in preparation for this presentation, The world of ADU is something, you know, we're going to keep this high level. We could talk a whole hour just on ADUs. But right now, the accessory dwelling unit is largely the granny unit or cottage or in-law that is added to a backyard of a home. So for example, I've got this home here, single family resident, SFR. There's space in this obviously side yard. Most of them are in the backyard. That you can place a tiny home. There's plenty of room here. There's certain setbacks from both the home and also the property line. I've kind of dotted, you know, this area around the city. The nice part about ADUs is they already use existing infrastructure, the roadways, emergency services, utilities, you name it, versus having to create brand new roads, brand new utility service, and all of that. And the areas where they are legal, all along the West Coast, the state of Washington, state of Oregon, and state of California. That means any jurisdiction, city or county in those states, they had to amend or adopt it to their codes. But they're able to put a small home in the backyard. Now, small home may be more in the 800 to 1,000 square feet. Largely, the tiny home movement is in the 400 square feet or less. But we're seeing this type of ADU movement happen in other areas around the country, like Denver just recently passed it, city of Chicago, and city of Atlanta. So it doesn't mean that the whole state of Georgia or the whole state of Illinois or the whole state of Colorado, but in those cities, which are typically experiencing housing crisis, a housing increase, a housing crisis, they're seeing a bigger need for, offering more additional housing. So tiny homes as accessory dwelling units on foundation or on wheels are really the opportunity here. And now we get into phase change material. So Rodney, take us through what PCMs are.
You can do that, okay? First off, what I want to do is I'm going to turn on our little demo box here. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I'll explain what we have here, okay? It's really kind of easy. What we have is we have two basically rooms here. We have temperature like sensors on the bottom. We have a piece of hardboard like an insulation, which separates these two spaces, two under cabinet 100 watt halogen lights, okay? So this is our heat source. We have a control site here with nothing there, and over here we have a piece of the energy blanket, okay? So what we'll do is we'll just let this go, okay? And really what we have here, this is like an inverted room. So this is people in a conference room, it's machines on a production floor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay? Phase change, all right. What they've developed is a 100% biodegradable chemical compound that's made from sustainable plant like the extracts, okay? A good portion of it is soybean oils, which generally get discarded in the processing of the soybeans, all right? And what they can do with this chemical compound is they can set a physical phase change temperature, all right? Now, when I say a phase change temperature, it's like an ice cube melting or freezing, all right? So when an ice cube melts, you got a little engine there, okay? Because when that ice cube is melting, it's absorbing 144 BTUs of heat, okay? What phase change can do is they can chemically set that physical phase change temperature anywhere from 85 degrees below zero to 347 degrees above zero. So we can literally have an ice cube that melts and freezes at 347 degrees above zero. And when it's doing that, when it's changing that phase, it's either absorbing heat or it's releasing heat. Okay. So Lindsay showed you the energy blanket, this guy right here. Okay. This energy blanket, this is what we put into buildings. All right. What phase change has found through their 20,000 plus installs that the optimum temperature for people in a structure is 73.4 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees C, okay? So this blanket, that little packets of the of the PCM, okay, the phase change material is set at 73.4 degrees. So when we put this in a building, all right, as the heat builds in that space, we absorb that heat and we hold the temperature constant, okay? By holding the temperature constant, what happens is we reduce the cycling of HVAC heating and cooling systems by 35%, by 40%, 50, 60, 70, sometimes huge numbers.
And Rodney, let me stop you there for a second. I just want to make sure I did stop the share, everyone, so you guys can see Rodney bigger. I just want to make sure that that's working for you. Any thumbs up or yes in the chat would be helpful for me.
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I going too fast?
I think the audio is fine, but I just want to make sure. Yes. Okay, great. Keep going.
Okay, cool. So by reducing the cycling of the HVAC systems, we reduce the overall energy usage within that building. And those energy usage reductions are typically 8%, 10%, 12, 15, 20, 25. And once again, sometimes much higher. It all depends on the facility, where it's at, the location, et cetera. All right. So once you start to think about it, what you have here is you have a thermal battery. Okay. You have a thermal battery that can be set at virtually any temperature you want. All right. A quick little story here. And back in October last year, on October 1st, the lowest temperature that we could go with the bio PCM was minus 58 degrees. Phase change for many years, one of their core businesses has been the shipment of pharmaceuticals and also the shipment of food. Okay. So they've worked with a lot of the pharma companies. Well, they were approached by a couple of the big players, and they put a fast track development in and were able to get the actual lowest phase change set temp down to minus 85 for shipment of the vaccines. Okay, so they're doing a whole bunch of that stuff. All right. So just give you an example. Now, this blanket here, all right, this is what we call the M35 Q23 blanket. Okay. The M number is the amount of BTUs of thermal energy storage capacity per square foot. All right. So this blanket here has 35 BTUs of thermal energy storage capacity per square foot. Okay. We have an M51 version, an M55, and an M75 as well. What we do in telecom environments, in data centers, in coolers, in freezers, refrigerated docks, is we put up something called the energy panel, which is a hollow plastic grate, which we fill with the PCM. Okay. This particular panel here, this version kind of gives us what, 450 to 500 BTUs, depending upon temperature.
Yep.
Yeah. So, this is what we use in refrigerated docks, freezers, coolers, cell site shelters, data centers, et cetera. Okay. But back to the blanket, because this is what you're going to be, mostly working with.
In residential, tiny homes.
Residential, it could be commercial, whatever the case. This thermal battery, you can put it anywhere in the space. Okay, because you're adding thermal mass to that building. So what we do in commercial environments is we take the blanket and we lay it right on top of ceiling tiles. Okay, and it can go anywhere. What we do in schools and libraries is we go under the desks, we go under bookshelves. Okay?
And I'm going to share my screen to show everyone what he's talking about, because we've taken some great pictures from the phase change material. Can you guys see that?
We can go in the roofing profile as well. Very good point, Lindsay. Thank you very much. Okay. So we can be under the floor. All right. I know one of the gentlemen that's on the call here Bruce has got a real interesting application with some radiant heating, which we're talking about. So you're adding thermal mass. To put it in perspective, okay, a half inch of this material is equivalent to 12 inches of concrete in thermal energy storage, like the capacity. Okay, so a couple important points. We do not replace the existing insulation within a facility. Ken, you want to jump in here because you know more about the whole moisture aspects and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, you got to have insulation according to code, period. Whatever the codes are, you got to follow that for insulating the house. And if they got vapor barriers and things like that, our material just goes next to the insulation, closest to the inside of the building.
Right.
The interior, right next to the drywall. If you're putting wood up there, you know, if you got paneling by the floor, like Rodney said, by the ceiling, as long as you're closest to the inside, because the R value with ceiling tiles or drywall, it's not real big. So our material sucks up that heat. We hold the temperature. It just does its thing in and out of the, you know, through the dry wood and things like that.
Yeah. Now, the real important point is that once we absorb the heat, and this process takes hours to happen, okay? Now, if we look at my little demo box on our control side, we're almost at 70 degrees already, okay? And yet over here, we started at what, 56 degrees, we're at 57.5, all right? We can let this go and go and go, and we'll probably end up with about a 30-degree spread, okay? But just kind of, keep an eye on it.
We have
I'm sorry, Lindsay?
We have a video of that. So,
yes.
But let me bring you all back to, some of the key benefits. This slide, you can see that, Rodney, about all the different benefits that the energy blanket.
Yeah, let me. Great slide. Let me jump in there. Yep. So we are 100% plant-based. All right. And the actual raw materials that go into the formulation of the bio PCM, we do not draw from food stocks that people are eating. Okay, I guess is the best way to put it. So really a lot of what is used in here is discarded in the processing of various foods. Okay. From a longevity standpoint, real interesting. Phase Change has been doing, still ongoing, what they call the MTBF, the mean time between failure. Okay. So what they've been doing down in Ashboro is they've been charging and discharging, or freezing and thawing the product. Okay. And at the 100-year mark, the temperature degradation is less than 2%. You put this in a building, it's going to outlast the building. As an example, this panel right here, this panel has a 30-year warranty. It's just, and the beauty of it, no mechanical connection, no electrical. It is a 100% passive technology. It just does its thing. It absorbs heat and it releases heat at the temperature of your choice. All right.
Rodney, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Dawn and I were talking about. It looks like the energy blanket has little individual pockets, I guess.
Packets, yes, pouches.
Yeah. So what happens if, the inevitable, you put it behind some drywall, someone punctures it with
Doesn't matter.
Not a thing. It really just, it just kind of dries up around the hole. Okay. So very important point. Once again, this is food grade. It's FDA approved. It's USDA approved. You can actually eat it. Now, a little story. One of the guys at Phase Change about 4 years ago was trying to prove a point to a prospective client, and he did eat some Phase Change. He's perfectly fine today. But after he ate the Phase Change, he went to the bathroom for 24 hours straight. So we strongly recommend that you don't eat it, but if push comes to shove and you're hungry, I guess you can. That's a good question, Dina. And We've actually messed around with it. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that when it changes phase, it does not change to a liquid, not this form. All right. It does come in a liquid form. All right. I'll digress real quick here. What we do with the liquid form is we put it in something called a phase store tank. Okay. And these are large tanks of the bio PCM, which will set at a specific temperature, and generally a little bit colder. All right. And what we use it for is to offset chillers in larger buildings. Okay. So one of the big uses there is peak demand load shifting. All right. The whole premise is that you have a phase store tank and you've got phase change temperature set at 42 degrees. Okay. You run your chiller at night with, 38 or 34 degree water through it. All right. And you freeze that phase store tank at 44 degrees or 42 or whatever. Come 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the peak demand loads are spiking. Okay. Shut your chiller off. Run your pumps and fans and draw off of the thermal battery until it's depleted, start the process again. Okay. We've got a lot of that happening, and a lot of the utilities are offering big rebates on this stuff too. Okay. So that's, once again, I got off on a tangent and I apologize. Let's get back to tiny homes.
It's great. Bruce just mentioned peak demand shift is what I'm looking at for PCM. So there's so many options for this material. We did want to focus this on the residential, at least the housing portion.
Mhm.
Largely when I found out about this material, I was a little bit annoyed that I had never heard about it. I think that's probably the biggest response that I've heard from most people. And one of the biggest reasons is it's been around for, more than 20 years, but it was in a salt form, which didn't last very long. The ROI wasn't very great, you name it. And now that the material has been transformed into more of a biodegradable plant-based, it gives a lot, and the 100-year lifespan, it gives
and
us
that huge temperature swing too. I mean, that, that's, it's a very, very good point. Phase change materials are not new. Okay. Early on, it was paraffin based and salt based. Okay. Major drawbacks with both, especially the salts based, it's very corrosive. Okay. The lifespan, the longevity, 7 to 10 years, maybe. Okay. And their actual, let's say, window of temperatures is very, very limited. All right. So what phase changes found is they found the secret sauce, all right, to do it all 100% green. Real important point about your homes, all right, or any facilities for that matter, where we have people in a structure, is through phase changes, 20,000 plus installs, they've discovered that sometimes less is more, all right? And the analogy we use is what freezes first, a cup of water or a bucket of water, okay? What they found early on, they used to cover the entire space. So if it was 100,000 square feet, that's what they put in. But what we found is that for structures, houses, and so forth, all we need is about a 60 to 65% coverage of the total square footage of a facility. Okay. What we like to do is we like to cover the areas where you have the largest heat load or heat gain. If you're in a tiny home, you want to try to get your roof. If you're in a house, you want to get your roof. Okay. If you're in a commercial building and it's a steel and glass structure and it's got a south facing wall with the sun, like banging in on it, go heavier on that south face. Okay. So there's a little bit of engineering which is involved, but not a whole bunch. Okay. Because what you're doing is you're adding thermal mass, you're adding a thermal battery to your building.
And one of the reasons why, and I'm going to share my screen again, that we really saw the opportunity for tiny homes is, as a solar educator, we're constantly dealing with, the issue. We always do these power audits. Well, in the power audit, the second you put the mini split in there, there goes, there's so much roof space for the tiny home. Obviously, if you can put the panels on the ground, that gives you more opportunity. But there's a certain point of like, there's only so much solar gain in North Dakota in the winter. Now, even with that, I not necessarily recommended, but the thermal energy storage of the phase change material can really start working well with the solar sizing of the system, because what you're doing is reducing the heating or cooling load, depending on, if you're in Arizona in the summer or North Dakota in the winter. Whichever direction, this unit is one of the biggest consumers on an electric solar system. And so we saw that as a big opportunity to really pair the two together. And now I just want to like bring you over to, this is the video. Actually, Rodney, you've got right behind you. I'll just kind of jump ahead.
Yeah.
As this is a time lapse video over a few minutes. So we ended with 81. What was that? 81 degrees.
Yeah, that was a 21 or 22 minute time lapse I did, down to about 1 minute and 58 seconds. But if you look at our demo box here, 75.5, 60.4. So the AC is starting to kick on already here. Okay. So real important point. I needed to jump in. I know I started before, but I went off on a tangent as usual. All right. But when we absorb the heat, you have to leach it off. Okay. That heat needs to be removed. So depending upon your environment, like if we're in Florida, okay, it's hot. All right. So if we have phase change deployed in a building, we will reduce the cycling of the mechanical systems a whole bunch, 35, 40, a whole bunch. All right. But as we absorb the heat, we need to leach it off. So what'll end up happening is that you might have to run your AC longer in the evenings, but what's happening is you're not short cycling the systems. Okay, and we'll touch on that in just a minute, or I should say Ken will. All right, but if you're in an environment where you have cool evenings, let Mother Nature do the work. Bring in that outside fresh air, and it can recharge itself. We got a great case study. I think it's on your slides, Lynn, that Phase Change did a few years back. It was a really nice modern steel and glass structure at the University of Washington.
We don't have it in this presentation, but it is on the slide deck. And I did want everyone to know that we have a Google folder that has white papers, case studies. Send me, actually, if you can add in the chat your email. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll send it out to everybody and give you the link, and Google share that folder.
Easiest way, yeah.
There's so much more. We did want to give some case studies here, and this one in Arizona, but go on about the one in Washington.
Yeah. Real quick. They did a deployment of the energy blanket, this stuff right here, the M35 Q23, and during their cooling season, they reduced HVAC usage by 96%. I hardly ever run it anymore. It's always cool in the evenings. You bring in the makeup air, and the rules are changing now due to what's happened in our world. Okay, that more outside air will need to be brought into all structures. Okay, so if you are cool in the evenings, it just gets real interesting. So, but Ken, talk about what we do for the mechanical systems by reducing the cycling and the short cycling.
Well, what I like to throw at it too is, especially in these tiny homes, and most of these structures are wood frame, maybe siding, whatever on there, and just drywall and insulation, or whatever the case may be. If you got this material in there, like Rodney said, a ½ inch of this material is equivalent to 12 inches of concrete and thermal storage, thermal management. So if you put this inside of one of those little tiny homes, it's like you're living in a cave. It kind of holds that temperature. When your air conditioner runs and it gets cold, it stays cold. It stays cool in there for a long time, because we hold so much of that thermal energy in a small space. So, you talk about the peak demand shifting. If it's cool in there and you got your shade shut or whatever the case may be on a hot sunny day, it's going to stay cool in there without that air conditioner running all the time to try to keep it that way. And the same goes in the evenings, as it cools down, like Rodney said, that heat has to get leached back off of it because it melted, and so on. It's got to get refrozen. So those kind of things are good. The power's cheaper. I mean, if you're on solar, then it really doesn't matter, but you can use a lot smaller system to do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
When it
Yeah,
comes to
absolutely.
heating and cooling equipment running, everybody knows that short cycling equipment's not good for it. It's going to wear it out faster. It's not as efficient. If you have your equipment running, if an air conditioner turns on and it runs for a longer period of time at a nice steady rate, it dehumidifies better and it's better for the equipment. It makes it last a lot longer. When it short cycles, it doesn't do its job. It's just not doing anything it's supposed to do. So the best way to do it, this material helps that equipment run at a more efficient stage, whether it's heating or cooling, either way.
Yep.
And here's the example of the University of Washington. Sorry, was it University of Washington?
Yep.
Yeah.
There we go. Seattle, brand new building. I was pretty amazed. This is a case study that is included in that Google Doc. But they wanted to take full advantage of the phase change material, and they were able to use it. And these images down here are pretty amazing. Were they able to not even include HVAC system into this building?
No, they still have it, but
They have it, but they don't run it.
they don't have to. They can use makeup air. If you got a rooftop units and they have economizers, you can bring in that outside air. It's called free cooling. We do it here. Everybody does it if you can, because you can bring in cool air and spread it out inside your space and cool it off. Like a day like here in Chicago, it's sunny, but it's only 50 degrees.
We're only 55 degrees out there. So
yeah, if it's warm inside the building because the sun's shining in, you can bring in that outside air to help cool it down. Otherwise, you got to turn the air conditioner on.
Right.
You're running air conditioner when it's 55. Nobody wants to pay for that. So we can eliminate that, and by doing that, then we're sucking up all that temperature and we're holding it because we got the blanket in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's thermal storage, and we hold on.
And this is the result, the innovation concept, energy savings of $70,000 per year, fast ROI.
Yeah,
It's a lot of money.
it's a big number.
Yeah, and in a tiny home, of course, it's less, but if you put this material, the place isn't big enough to add up to a lot of money for the material that you would need to make it effective for what you're trying to do.
And that's a good question. So a lot of people do ask about the square footage, price per square foot is how this product is priced. And we're talking specifically of the energy blanket. Maybe Rodney, you can talk a little bit more about pricing for this per square foot.
Yeah, what you got to figure is about $3.50 per square foot. Okay. And the price will fluctuate because there are, raw materials that go with, that are commodities. All right. So there will be some fluctuations, but that's probably a good baseline to work with. Okay. Real quick, just to jump in, something to think about, just to get your arms around what we can do with this material. We've got many applications where we are doing what we call hot and cold, like recovery. Okay. So in food processing, all right, what we're doing is we're capturing waste heat and preheating water coming in from the city mains to reduce the amount of natural gas required in their boilers to heat water to do like wash downs. Okay, just one example. For cold recovery, crazy example here. All right, we're working with a park district in Joliet, Illinois. They have an athletic center, the Inwood Recreation and Athletic Center, and they have an ice rink there. Okay, and if your ice rinks by you or anything like they are here in the Metro Chicago area, they were busy. Okay, they have this thing called a Zamboni, which shaves that ice off. Well, they take that shaved ice and they dump it into a big trough and they let it melt away. Well, what we're doing is we have a heat exchanger in this trough and take that captured cold into a phase stored tank with the phase change material, the temp set at 44 degrees. we charge or freeze that tank with that waste cold and then use that to supplement the cooling in their offices. All right. So it is a fantastic way. You know, once you get your arms around it, the applications get crazy. All right. I mean, we can do so much. Solar panels. We put this on the back of solar panels to keep them cooler so they don't lose the efficiencies as they heat up. Okay. So you start thinking about the applications. And I mean, I know we went off another tangent here. Sorry about that. But, you know, just for everyone to kind of get their arms around it and what we can do with the technology. It's really amazing stuff.
Absolutely. So I do have some case studies I can take everyone through. Maybe this is a great time to find out from people, what are some of the applications you're already seeing in your industry? I know there's a number of people that have that are here from the Tiny House Conference, people that you've talked with, Rodney. Anyone either in the chat or want to unmute yourself and just share with us some of the applications that you're thinking about? And then
Yep. Or any questions.
Yep.
Hi, this is Jonathan Hammond, and I have some very specific questions. With the blanket, what is the weight of the blanket per square foot?
That will all depend on which version blanket we have. Okay. The M35, the actual total weight of a 2x4 sheet, which is one of the standard forms it comes in. Okay. That is the typical. It's 4.25 pounds.
4.25 pounds.
Yep. Then if we look at our energy panel here, now this is the what we call the 40x40. That's 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters, about 15.5 by 15.5. When this is full, this is 7.3 pounds.
Okay. So
Okay.
what is the specific heat of the material? So what, I mean, it's going to change temperature once it's melted, or
You could pick a number though, where it changes phase.
well, I understand that. That's great. But my question is, what is the specific heat of this material?
That I do not know, sir.
All right. Well, that would be interesting to know that.
Yeah.
And then what is the BTUs per square foot of, you know, at the phase change point? When you
At the actual phase change point, well, it's at the phase change point, what's actually taking place is we're absorbing 4 to 5 BTUs of heat per hour, okay, per square foot. All right. So that would be the absorption and the extraction rates. Okay.
That's the energy blanket.
All right. This is the energy blanket.
That's behind a piece of that's behind a piece of sheetrock.
It can be. It can be behind. That can be behind sheetrock, plasterboard, wood paneling, concrete, plaster.
It must make a difference what it's behind.
It will a little bit because of the R value of drywall compared to plastic.
So you're saying,
wouldn't last.
this will absorb 4 to 5 BTUs per hour per square foot.
Mhm.
And that's when you're at the tuned point. And what is the total heat absorption or heat that's given off when it changes phase?
That I don't know either.
It's
Per square foot.
And Jonathan, what's your application? Is this a residential or
Residential? Yeah, residential.
Okay.
yeah.
Residential. One of the things that, you know, we'll have our contact information at the very end.
Yeah, I mean,
Each project is going to have its own calculations in terms of square footage, application, you know, like what Rodney mentioned, you know, north facing, south facing.
I understand that. I do understand that, but and we can figure out how we can use it, but we just need this. I mean, cost is important, of course, and then just the engineering data on this. How much? What does it weigh? What's its specific heat? How much does it absorb and give off at what rates? You know, and what is the total I thought you said that it gave off 35 BTUs.
Well, that's the
Storage.
that is the total amount of storage capacity, thermal storage, energy capacity with the M35 blanket. Okay.
So that's the phase change. In other words, in order to melt 1 square foot of this M35 blanket, it's 35 BTUs.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
And that total process there, okay, will take about 7 to 8 3/4 hours.
okay.
Okay. So,
Email you some of these questions too, and then
oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You have data, I presume you have data sheets that you could send us
Yes.
on this,
Oh,
right?
we do. Yes, absolutely.
So everyone that
Absolutely.
signed up will get this recording as well as a link to be able to view all the documents. There's data sheets, there's white papers, the case studies, all of that. And would now be a good time to just show some of the case studies unless someone has another important question to answer?
Any of the questions that you guys have that Rodney or I can't
Hey,
take?
one last question. That was on the price.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, your sort of ballpark price is $3.20 delivered in California, say?
Yeah. Yeah. Go with 350. Okay. And yes, that would be delivered in California. Sure. And that is for the M35.
How do you attach this material inside how do you attach it to your studs?
You can staple it or nail it or screw it, whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's got a flange so that
There's a lip on the edge, yeah.
There is, and there's a seam here too. Okay. Here, let's get a bigger one up here.
Yeah, this is
Can
a
you see
cutoff
that
of
on
this.
Lindsay's screen, John?
And to give you an idea, we've got a seam here that kind of runs down, and that's every, I don't know, 6, 8 inches or so. All right. This is actually a 2x4 sheet, which I had cut a couple samples off of. Another important point is this is poly on foil. Okay. It can be poly on poly. It can be poly on foil, or foil or poly. Mostly what we see is poly on foil. Okay. But the pricing, back to that will depend on which version of the blanket we use. Okay. As I said, we have an M35, an M51, an M55, and an M75. Okay. We have used the 75 in a number of installations, Ken, where, such as Indiana University, we were on top of a plaster ceiling. All right. It can handle the weight. All right. When we're on top of drop ceiling tile, all right. The heaviest version we will go with is the M51. All right. Which is maybe 5 and change pounds wise, for a 2x4 sheet. So.
And Rodney, quick question. Does the PCM expand or contract as it freezes or thaws? I said it goes from a solid to a gel.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That is correct. And there is no expansion. It will actually contract a little bit when it charges or freezes. Okay. Very important for chiller applications in large commercial apps. Okay. Zero expansion.
Great. I do want to share my screen. Just to, there was a concept about one of the case studies, and the reason why I found these specific case studies is that they kind of mirror a little bit more of what a tiny home would be, or an ADU. I'm thinking of more of the smaller buildings, but for that matter, it can be applied to anything. But you can really see this is based in Arizona, where your hotter temperatures, of course, in the summertime. And overall a 20% savings in just these little sheds. And I really like this because one had it and one did not have the PCM material. So it's a really good controlled study using the energy blanket and gypsum. And then the other one, this is a great study done in Fort Irwin, also another area where it gets pretty warm, having a lot of issues with keeping temperature regulated inside a concrete building, even though that was cinder block, but they were able to put in the phase change material in the roofing and also the walls. And they were able to maintain consistent temperatures throughout day and have energy savings. Another project in Asheboro, North Carolina, done to the roof because this is a historic building. They couldn't change the walls. They couldn't do much other than touch the roofing and not even underneath the ceiling inside the building. It had to be on top.
Right.
And so that's where you'll see, oftentimes some people think, well, let's get rid of that insulation. And this is insulation. That is not correct. You still need that barrier in between. So you've got the sheathing, the insulation, that hard foam, and then the material right up against the rooftop right there. And they were able to do what they needed to do for this building, retain the historic nature, and put in a whole bakery cafe inside. So that's really attractive. This one is the one that goes back to the 12, the 1 foot of concrete. Is that right? What is it? The one, tell me again, Rodney,
Yeah, 1/2 inch of the material, that's equivalent to 12 inches of concrete and thermal energy storage capacity.
Yeah, so passive houses are, if you're not familiar with them, they largely do not use any heating or cooling systems. They use ventilation because they take the envelope and they completely seal it up. Some people might think that's not very healthy, but the more you seal up a home and provide ventilation, the less heating and cooling you're going to need. I was in a house in Santa Cruz. I was totally a passive house nut for a while. No heating or cooling system, just a ventilation system. And the way they do that is using a lot of concrete. Well, you know, concrete is definitely an impact on our environment and creating it. So they were able to do everything they needed to do without concrete for this house in Carmel using the energy blanket. Let's see if I have the next slide. Yeah, they got an award for this house and able to use it as a thermal heat sink behind the walls and did basically what they needed to do instead of using concrete. And so then this one, I thought I'd bring this one in just for fun, right? To really show you that it's not just about pizza. The early days, they decided to push it a little bit and get a Guinness Book of World Records. They took 4 days to get up to the top of Kilimanjaro, and they kept the pie warm after 4 days. And this guy in the red jacket is the Guinness Book of World Records, like, you know, what do you call it? Officiator, adjudicator. There we go.
There we go.
So, thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, BioPCM for ADUs and tiny homes, I think has a big opportunity. And then here's our information, and I will make sure to put it in the chat. And with that, happy to take more questions. Anyone
Hey, Bruce Murray, you just typed a question in. What do you got, man?
Let's see. Past attempts have been made to put PCM directly into drywall. Is that still in development? Oh, into the drywall.
Yeah. Okay, built right into the drywall itself. Not at this point. Not that I know of. Okay, Phase Change has looked at that. All right.
That's too much money so far.
We've looked at ceiling tiles as well. All right. But no, they really nothing's been productized. All right. I think where we'll probably see the first applications are with the panel manufacturers for the coolers and freezers, and possibly the refrigerated trailers for food transport, which we're doing a whole bunch in right now. In fact, that's why we have the hard stop at 3.
I think I'm online here. I think about 10 years, I've been following this PCM thing for a long time. About 10 years ago, there were several manufacturers trying to get it into the drywall and make it a single product, that 4x8 sheet that the industry would recognize. And it may have been back when they were using some of the older technologies and older materials.
Sure.
But it didn't, it disappeared. So I assume it was a failure.
Yeah, it's real interesting because what Phase Change can do, I mean, it can be in a gel format, it can be in a liquid format. We have bricks of it, which are like solid bricks. It can be flaked, okay? So they actually have a version of it which if you can get your arms around this, when it phases change, it's solid to solid, okay? And it's actually a flexible, kind of clear piece of rubber that when it changes phase, it turns opaque and light blue, all right? So what we have in phase change in Asheboro basically is a material science company, all right? And they are pushing the envelope on what we can do with the bio-based PCM, you know.
Yeah, my interest is as a replacement for, as you've mentioned several times, the concrete mass, the solid mass. And one of the interesting things I've researched and found out about when you use a solid rock mass, that the temperature that comes off of that mass as you heat it and as it reduces is variable. So it'll heat up, and that mass is got a temperature to it. It keeps going up and up and up, and then it will slowly come down and down and down, where it appears that the PCM material will hit a certain point and that mass will stay there, and you can kind of rely on the PCM at that melting point to be at 23°C or 73 Fahrenheit, and it will stay there as it absorbs more and more and more energy.
Yeah, it'll go over the set temp a little bit, okay, but not much. I mean, the highest I've ever seen, the actual M35, the energy blanket is 77 degrees. Okay, that's the highest. So, but very, very good points, Bruce. So,
and I like your video right now. You're at the 85 degree versus 7.
Yeah, we haven't even started to change phase yet. Okay, and this is accelerated. Another important point, depending upon your application, phase change can actually adjust the thermal conductivity of the material as well. So if there's an application where you need to charge very, very quickly and release very, very quickly, they can make that happen. We don't see that often. It's specialized areas, okay? Yeah, so, never. You know, the food processing.
You're getting your energy savings out of it by the duration.
Yeah.
It holds equipment off for a longer period of time, and then it comes on and runs for a little bit longer. You're getting better use out of the phase change materials and better use out of your equipment. If you're trying to do the homes with no HVAC equipment, like the one case study, that can be done too. If you're bringing in ventilation from outside at certain temperatures to cool it down and do things like that, that works too.
You know what, Ken brings up a real interesting point. In a large industrial warehouse environment, if you have a large unconditioned space that gets extremely warm in the summertime, put the phase change in there with that phase change temp at 77 or 80 or 82, okay? You're not going to cool the place, but you're going to temper the work environment, and we have done this, all right? And if with a phase change temp set at 77 or 80, you're always going to recharge with makeup air at night, okay? Because there's very few environments, especially Florida, you know, or in Phoenix, where you don't get below 80 or 82 at night or whatever the case. So actually down in Asheboro, in their production plant, that's an unconditioned facility. They have phase change, of course, deployed in there. And Ken and I've been there in July or August when we were there, Ken, and it's not bad at all in there. It's comfortable, okay? And it's an unconditioned space. So.
Yeah, Rodney, I think I briefly mentioned what I'm trying to do, and that is I'm trying to use a in-floor heating system that's designed to run at 24 volts, power it by photovoltaic panels during the day, and route that solar panel energy directly into the heating element, and then have that drive the storage into the PCM. So as soon as the sun goes down, instead of me using lithium-ion batteries or some other battery technology to run heat into the house at night, the heat that was gained during the day from the solar panels or the electricity heat then into the PCM, it'll slowly release overnight. And that's kind of the idea I'm trying to figure out here, and balance the output from the heating element to the melting point of the PCM. And that's why you sent me that sample, and I'm going to try it out with the
That's a
system and
perfect
see what works.
application, Bruce. And yeah, you know what? Let's work together on it. I mean, that will work. There's no
for
doubt
sure.
about it. Yeah,
Release slowly over
yeah,
the,
I like that.
it doesn't just
Full application.
right out of it. Hey, you know what? My ride's here. I gotta get to the airport.
All right, you guys. And I do want to share everyone. Thank you so much, Ken, for being here.
Yeah,
I
thanks
want
a
to
lot,
share
guys.
all of you. This is the documents and Google Doc that we'll be able to send you. It's got all the white papers, case studies, you name
Okay.
it.
Lindsay,
And,
bye-bye. Real quick. 87 degrees here, 68.5 there. That's it.
Awesome.
Listen, thanks everyone. Lindsay, thank you ever so much. Questions, comments, anytime, folks, please reach out. Dina, we'll be talking, I'm sure.
Yep, we will. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.